My mother-in-law announced my miscarriage at dinner, and I announced her affair at her wedding anniversary party. I was 12 weeks pregnant when I felt something warm running down my leg. I went to the bathroom at work and saw blood soaking my dress. I called my husband Mac with trembling hands and said, "Something's wrong with the baby. There's so much blood. Come get me now." He said, "I'm on my way. Don't move." And I could hear him grab his keys and run. By the time they got me into a room and hooked me up to the monitors, our baby was already gone. The doctor used words like spontaneous and nothing you could have done. But all I heard was that the little heart we had seen on the ultrasound 3 weeks ago had stopped, and there was no medical reason for it. Max sat on the edge of my hospital bed, put his face in his hands and cried. I reached for him and said, "I'm so sorry." He looked up and said, "No, this is not your fault." He pulled me to his chest, and we stayed like that until the nurse came to talk to us about the next steps. We agreed not to tell anyone until we were ready. "I can't deal with your mother right now," I said. Mac nodded and replied, "I know. We'll tell people when you're ready. Nobody needs to know yet." I trusted him because I had no reason not to, and I forgot that keeping secrets from his mother Lena was impossible because she had a key to our house and used it whenever she pleased. 3 days later, I was sitting on the kitchen floor crying over a onesie I had bought the week before when I heard the front door open. There was Lena, standing over me with shopping bags in her hands and her lips pressed into a thin line of disapproval. "Whoa," she said, looking at the tissues scattered on the floor and the empty ice cream container on the counter. "What a scene." I wiped my face and said, "Lena, I wasn't expecting you." She stepped over me to put the bags on the counter and said, "Clearly. You know, when Mac told me you weren't feeling well, I assumed it was something minor, a cold, maybe not a full-blown meltdown in the middle of the day." She turned and looked at the onesie in my hands and narrowed her eyes. "That's a baby outfit. Why are you sitting on the floor crying over a baby outfit?" I didn't want to tell her anything, but she kept looking at me with that stare she gave waiters when the food came out wrong, and the words came out anyway because I was exhausted and empty and just wanted her to leave. "I lost the baby," I said, and my voice broke on the last word. 3 days ago. We weren't going to tell anyone yet." Lena's face shifted into something that almost looked like sympathy, if you didn't know her well enough to see the calculation behind it. She knelt on the floor beside me, took my hands and said, "Oh honey, that explains everything. I knew something was off with you lately, but I thought you were just being moody again." I said, "I'm not being moody. I lost my baby." She squeezed my hands and said, I know, and I'm sure you're blaming yourself. Even though the doctor probably told you these things just happen sometimes, especially with a first pregnancy, especially when the mother is under a lot of stress." She looked at me, her head tilted. "You have been under a lot of stress, haven't you? Working all those hours, not taking care of yourself. I told Mac months ago that you needed to slow down, but you never listened to me." I pulled my hands back and said, "The doctor said it was nothing I did." Lena nodded slowly and said, "Of course he did, they always say that, but we both know you could have taken better care of yourself, eaten better, rested more. You're not exactly known for putting your family first, are you?" She patted my knee. "But what's done is done. No use dwelling on it now." I said, "Please don't tell anyone. I need time before the whole family knows." She put her hand over her heart and said, "Honey, I would never betray your trust like that. I swear on my marriage. This stays between us until you're ready. Though I do think the family deserves to know eventually. They've been asking about grandchildren for years, and it's not fair to keep them in the dark forever, just because you're ashamed." That Friday, she called and said she was having a small dinner party, because we needed to be surrounded by people who loved us. "Just immediate family," she said. "You really need to get out of that house. Sitting around crying isn't going to bring the baby back." I said, "I don't think I'm ready for company." She sighed heavily and said, "Ellis, this isn't about what you want. Mac is hurting and he needs his family around him right now. Or is this going to be like every other time where your needs come before his?" So I put on a dress and let Mac drive me to his parents' house, where 30 people were waiting in the dining room. I grabbed his arm and whispered, "You said immediate family." And he said, "I think Mom invited a few more people. Just hang in there."
Elle.
Ina was floating through the crowd in a cream dress. When she saw me, she rushed over, cupped my face and said loudly, "Oh, you poor thing, you look exhausted. Have you been sleeping? You have circles under your eyes." Everyone nearby turned to look at me. Halfway through dinner, Lena stood up and tapped her wine glass, and the room fell silent. "I need your prayers," she said, with tears rolling down her face. "My son just lost his first baby, and I'm trying to be strong for him, but my heart is absolutely broken." 30 faces turned to me. Lena sat back down, grabbed my hand, leaned in and whispered, "You should really smile. People are going to think you don't appreciate them being here for you." I decided right then and there that the next morning, I would sit Mac down and force him to choose between me and his mother. Lena thought I would stay quiet because that's what I always did, but she had just made the biggest mistake of her life. She wanted to play the grieving grandmother in front of 30 people, so I was going to make her explain why she broke her promise in front of her son. For the first time in 5 years, I wasn't afraid of what would happen when I finally stopped being polite. I'll tell you exactly how that conversation went. The car ride home was silent for the first 10 minutes. I stared out the window and waited for Mac to say something, to apologize, to acknowledge that his mother had just done something unforgivable. Finally, he cleared his throat and said, "I know tonight wasn't what you expected." I laughed out loud because that was the biggest understatement I had ever heard. "It wasn't what I expected, Mac. Your mother announced our loss to 30 people after promising she wouldn't tell anyone." He gripped the steering wheel and said, "She was trying to help. She thought you needed support." I turned to look at him and said, "She thought I needed support, or she thought she needed an audience?" He didn't answer. We pulled into the garage, and he turned off the car and just sat there, staring at the garage door. "I need you to apologize to her," he said calmly. I was sure I had misheard him. "What?" He turned to look at me with that soft expression he used when he was about to ask me to do something I didn't want to do. "You barely spoke to anyone all night. You didn't thank her for dinner. You just sat there looking miserable. And now she's upset because she thinks you're mad at her." I opened my mouth and closed it because I couldn't find the words for what I was hearing. "I am mad at her," I said finally. "She told everyone about the baby after she promised she wouldn't. I have a right to be mad, Mac." He sighed and rubbed his eyes. "She made a mistake. She got emotional. But giving her the silent treatment all night was cruel. And you need to apologize by tomorrow morning." I got out of the car and went into the house without answering. He followed me into the bedroom and said, "Ellis, I'm serious. She called me crying on the way home. She thinks you hate her." I changed into my pajamas and said, "Good. Maybe she should think about why." He looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language. "You're being irrational. All she did was ask for prayers. That's what family does." I got into bed, turned off the lamp and said, "If you can't see what she did wrong, then I don't know how to explain it to you." He stood there in the dark for a long moment. Then he left, and I heard the guest room door close behind him. The next morning, I woke up to 17 text messages. Mac's aunt asking if I was okay because Lena had called, worried about my mental state. His cousin asking if I needed anything because she heard I wasn't coping well with the loss. Another cousin saying, "Lena mentioned you were acting erratically, and if you wanted to talk to any professionals." I scrolled through message after message from people I barely knew, expressing concern for my stability, because Lena had spent the night calling everyone in the family to say something was wrong with me. I found Mac in the kitchen drinking coffee and showed him my phone. "Look at this. Look at what she's doing." He glanced at the screen and shrugged. "She's just worried about you. We all are." I said, "She's not worried about me. She's trying to make everyone think I'm crazy so that when I tell them what she did, no one will believe me." Mac put his coffee down and said, "Listen to yourself. You sound paranoid now. My mother loves you. She's trying to help, and you're acting like she's some kind of villain." I looked at him and realized he would never see it. He had spent 30 years being trained to believe that everything Lena did was out of love, and nothing I said would undo that programming in one conversation. 3 days later, a coworker stopped me in the hall and asked if everything was okay at home. I said, "What do you mean?" And she looked uncomfortable and said, "Your mother-in-law was at my church's prayer group last night. She asked everyone to pray for you because you aren't taking care of yourself." she said. You've been struggling since the pregnancy, and she's worried you might hurt yourself. I felt the floor tilt beneath me. Lena had gone to my coworker's church. She stood up in front of strangers and painted me as someone who might hurt herself. She was building a case, documenting a pattern, making sure that when I finally snapped and told everyone what she had done, they would already believe I was unstable. I drove home and found Mac watching TV and said, "Your mother told my coworker's prayer group that she's worried I might hurt myself." He muted the TV and said, "She mentioned she was going to talk to some people about getting support for you. I think it's a good idea. You really haven't been yourself lately." I said, "I haven't been myself because I lost a baby. And then your mother announced it to 30 people, and then spent the next week telling everyone I'm crazy." He got up, walked over to me, and put his hands on my shoulders like he was trying to calm a frightened animal. "Honey, I think you should talk to someone. A therapist, maybe. Mom knows a really good one from the church. She thinks you're not processing the loss in a healthy way, and honestly, I'm starting to agree with her." I pulled away from him. "You want me to see a therapist that your mother recommended so she can control that narrative too?" He threw his hands up in the air. "See, this is exactly what I'm talking about. You're acting like everyone is out to get you. This isn't normal, Ellis. This isn't healthy." That night, he moved into the guest room. He said he needed space to think because I was refusing to apologize and refusing to get help, and he didn't know what else to do. I lay in our bed alone, staring at the ceiling and thinking about how Lena had managed to win so completely. In less than 2 weeks, my husband thought I was crazy, his family thought I was crazy, and my coworkers thought I was crazy. She took my lowest moment and used it to destroy every relationship I had. And she did it all while crying and asking for prayers. The next morning, I saw that Lena had posted a photo from the dinner party on Facebook. It was a picture of her hugging me at the table with her eyes closed and her face pressed into my hair. The caption read, "Please pray for my sweet daughter-in-law during this difficult time. She's struggling, but our family will see her through this." 200 likes. 40 comments about what an amazing mother-in-law she was. A dozen people tagging mental health resources for me to read. I screenshotted the whole thing and sent it to my best friend Daniel with the message, "Am I crazy or is this insane?" He called me immediately. "What the hell is wrong with that woman? She's posting about your loss on Facebook and making it sound like you're having a breakdown." I told him everything. The dinner, the text, the prayer group. Mac moving into the guest room. Daniel was quiet for a long time and then he said, "You have to get out of there. That woman is trying to destroy you, and your husband is helping her do it." I said, "I can't just leave. Where would I go?" He said, "You can stay with me, but Ellis, I'm serious. What she's doing isn't normal. This is calculated. She's building a case against you, and you need to figure out what it is before she's done." I thanked him, hung up, and sat in my kitchen wondering how my life had unraveled so completely in 2 weeks. I'd lost my baby, I'd lost my husband, I'd lost my reputation, and Lena was out there collecting sympathy and prayers while I sat alone in a house that didn't feel like mine anymore. I agreed to help set up for Lena's wedding anniversary party, but I didn't go there to fold napkins. She thought sending me to her house alone was safe because she'd already convinced everyone I was the crazy one. But women like Lena always have secrets, and I was going to search every room until I found something that proved who she really was. She had no idea what she was handing me. When she gave me those keys, what I found in her closet changed absolutely everything. 2 weeks after the dinner party, Lena called and said she needed help setting up for her 30th wedding anniversary party. "Kenneth is out of town until Thursday, and I can't possibly do everything myself," she said in that sweet voice that made me want to throw the phone across the room. "You'll come help, won't you? It would mean so much to me." I said yes because Mac was standing right there and because I knew that refusing would just give her more ammunition. She would tell everyone I was too unstable to help with a simple party, adding it to her list of evidence that something was wrong with me. So on Saturday morning, I drove to her house and spent 3 hours carrying boxes and ironing tablecloths while she supervised from the couch and pointed out everything I was doing wrong. "The napkins should be folded into swans, not rectangles," she said without looking up from her phone. "And those centerpieces need to go on the west side of the room. The light is better there for photos." I would nod, adjust, rearrange, and fantasize about walking out the door and never coming back. Around noon, she sent me upstairs to get extra chairs from her bedroom closet. "They're in the very back," she called after me. "Behind the boxes. Make sure you don't mess anything up while you're looking." I went upstairs into the master bedroom and opened the closet door. It was massive. A walk-in closet the size of my living room, with shelves, drawers, and racks of clothes organized by color. I pushed through the dresses, moved a few boxes, and found the chairs folded against the back wall. As I was pulling them out, I knocked over a shoebox on the top shelf, and it burst open, scattering receipts everywhere. I knelt to pick them up, and that's when I saw what they were for: jewelry, expensive jewelry. A diamond bracelet from 2 years ago, pearl earrings from last Christmas, a necklace that cost more than my car. I'd never seen Lena wear any of it, not once. I was putting the receipts back when I heard her phone buzz on the bedroom nightstand. She must have left it up there when she went to answer the door earlier. I should have ignored it. I should have taken the chairs, gone back downstairs, and pretended I never saw anything. But something made me walk over and look at the screen. The notification was from someone named Emmanuel with a heart emoji. The preview showed the first line of the text. "Last night was perfect. I can't stop thinking about you." My entire body went cold. Emmanuel. I knew that name. He was the deacon at Lena's church. He'd been coming to family dinners for years. He always sat next to her, always refilled her wine glass before anyone else's, always laughed a little too loudly at her jokes. I told myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe it was a different Emmanuel. Maybe the text was innocent and I was reading too much into it because I wanted to find something wrong with her. But my hands were already moving. I picked up her phone and typed in the passcode I'd watched her enter 100 times at family dinners. It opened immediately. I went to her messages, found the conversation from Emmanuel, and started scrolling. "I miss you already. You're the only one who understands me. Kenneth doesn't touch me the way you do. I wish I had married you." 7 years of messages. 7 years of "I love you," "I need you," "You're my soulmate," and explicit descriptions of things that turned my stomach. I kept scrolling, my hands shaking, and I found pictures. Lena in lingerie I'd never seen before. Emmanuel shirtless in what looked like a hotel room. The two of them in bed together with timestamps from dates I recognized. Their anniversary trip to Napa, the family reunion at Lake Tahoe, Christmas Eve 2 years ago when she said she was tired and went to bed early. I backed out of the messages and checked her photos and found a hidden album with hundreds more. Hotel rooms, restaurant receipts, and screenshots of reservations in places she told Kenneth she was visiting with her girlfriends. Then I remembered the jewelry receipts, went back to the closet, and looked at the dates. Every single piece was purchased within a week of one of their anniversary trips. Emmanuel was buying her gifts she couldn't wear around her husband. Gifts she kept hidden in her closet like trophies. I stood in that closet, surrounded by evidence of 7 years of lies, and I felt something shift inside me. This woman had destroyed my reputation. She had turned my husband against me. She had announced my lifeless baby to 30 people, and then told everyone I was crazy when I got upset about it. And the whole time, she was preaching about fidelity and family values while sleeping with the deacon from her church. I took out my phone and started screenshotting everything. The messages, the pictures, the receipts. I worked quickly and methodically and saved every piece of evidence I could find on my own phone. Then I put her phone back exactly where I found it, grabbed the chairs and went downstairs. "Found them," I said. "Where do you want them?" Lena smiled at me from the couch and said, "Over by the windows. And thank you so much for helping. I know things have been difficult between us lately, but I really do appreciate you." I smiled back and said, "Of course. That's what family is for." She had no idea I had just found everything I needed to destroy her. I spent the rest of the afternoon setting up chairs, hanging decorations, and watching Lena bark orders at the caterers while I thought about what I was going to do with the information I found. Part of me wanted to tell Kenneth immediately. He deserved to know what his wife had been doing for 7 years. But another part of me knew that wasn't enough. Lena had publicly humiliated me. She stood up in front of 30 people and announced my loss. And then she spent 2 weeks making everyone think I was unstable. She didn't deserve a quiet conversation. She deserved to feel exactly what I felt. Exposed, humiliated, destroyed, in front of everyone she wanted to impress. The anniversary party was in 2 weeks. 200 guests were coming to celebrate 30 years of faithful marriage. There would be a projector for the slideshow and a microphone for the toasts. And every single person Lena had ever tried to impress would be in that room, watching her accept congratulations for a marriage she had been destroying since before I even knew Mac. I drove home with my phone full of screenshots and a plan starting to form in my mind. I had 7 years of proof saved on my phone, and I was finally going to show Mac exactly who his perfect mother was. Lena had no idea I found her secret phone, while she was downstairs bragging about her faithful marriage. Tonight I was going to sit my husband down and make him look at every single message until he couldn't deny it anymore. There was no way he could defend her after seeing this. I'll tell you exactly how that conversation went. I waited until Mac got home from work. I sat him down at the kitchen table and said, "I need to show you something, and I need you to really look before you say anything." He sighed like I was about to waste his time, but he sat down and said, "Okay, what is it?" I slid my phone across the table with the messages from Emmanuel open on the screen. Mac picked up the phone and scrolled in silence for a long time. I watched his face, waiting to see the moment he realized I was telling the truth about her all along. When he finally looked up, his expression wasn't shock or anger or betrayal. It was disgust aimed at me. "You went through my mother's phone," he said. I blinked. "Did you read what's on there? She's been cheating on your father for 7 years with the deacon from her church. There are pictures and receipts." And he stood up and threw my phone on the table. "I don't care what's on there. You hacked into my mother's phone and invaded her privacy, and now you're trying to use whatever you found to turn me against her." I could feel the ground shifting under me. "I didn't hack anything." She left the phone upstairs and I saw a text notification and I looked because you're obsessed with proving she's a bad person. He cut me off sharply. "You've been paranoid about her for weeks, and now you're going through her phone looking for dirt. Do you have any idea how crazy that sounds?" I grabbed the phone and held it up to his face. "Look at the pictures, Mac. Look at the dates. She was with him on your parents' anniversary trip. She was with him on Christmas Eve. This isn't paranoia. This is proof." He shook his head slowly, refusing to process the information. "Or is it fake? You could have made this all up. Photoshopped the messages, created fake screenshots to frame her because you're jealous of how close we are." I looked at him and I realized he would never believe me. It didn't matter what evidence I had. He had spent 30 years believing everything his mother said. And nothing was going to change that, not even proof of her affair. "I didn't fake anything," I said calmly. "But you're going to believe what you want to believe, aren't you?" He walked to the door and stopped. "I'm staying at my mother's tonight. I think you need some time alone to think about what you did." He left and I sat at the kitchen table staring at the screenshots on my phone, wondering how Lena had managed to win, even when I had proof of her worst secret. The next morning, I woke up to a text from a number I didn't recognize. It said, "I know what you found. Keep your mouth shut, or I'll tell everyone you caused your own miscarriage." My whole body went cold. I stared at the message, read it 3 more times and felt my hands start to shake. She knew. Somehow she knew I'd found the messages, and instead of being afraid, she was threatening me. I called Mac and he didn't answer. I called again and it went straight to voicemail. I drove to Lena's house and found them sitting on the porch together, drinking coffee like nothing was wrong. When I got out of the car, Lena smiled and said, "Good morning, dear. Did you sleep well? Mac mentioned you've been having trouble sleeping lately." I held up my phone and showed her the message. "You sent this." She tilted her head in rehearsed confusion. "Sent what? I don't know what you're talking about." Mac took the phone, read the message and his face hardened. "You probably sent it to yourself," he said, "to make her look bad just like you faked those screenshots." Lena reached out, patted his arm and said, "It's okay, honey. She's not well. We both know that. Maybe it's time we talked about getting her some real help before she does something she can't take back." I looked at the two of them, mother and son, united against me, and I realized that a private confrontation would never work. Lena had spent 30 years training Mac to believe her over anyone else. She had contingency plans and excuses and tears ready for every accusation I could throw at her. If I wanted to expose her, I'd have to do it somewhere she couldn't twist the story. Somewhere everyone could see the evidence for themselves and make their own judgments. Somewhere she couldn't whisper in Mac's ear about what really happened. The wedding anniversary party was in 6 days. 200 witnesses, a projector screen, a microphone. If she wanted to celebrate 30 years of faithful marriage, I was going to make sure everyone saw exactly what those 30 years looked like. The private confrontation failed, so I was going to destroy Lena in front of everyone she had ever wanted to impress. She thought she won because Mac chose her, but she forgot about the 200 guests coming to celebrate her perfect marriage. That party would have a projector and a microphone, and I was going to use both. She wanted to play the devoted wife in front of her friends, so I was going to let her play her part right up until the moment I pulled the rug out from under her. The night of the party, I stood in front of my closet for 20 minutes, trying to decide what to wear. Mac hadn't been home in 4 days. He was staying at his mother's and only texted me to ask if I had calmed down yet. I chose a red dress I bought years ago and never wore because Lena once said red was too attention-seeking for someone with my complexion. I did my makeup slowly and carefully, thinking about what I was about to do. The USB drive was already in my purse. I'd spent the last 5 days organizing everything. Messages organized by date, photos in chronological order, a timeline that showed exactly when each milestone of the affair happened and what lie Lena told Kenneth to cover it up. I drove to the venue alone. It was a ballroom at the Mina, the fanciest hotel in town. Crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, and 200 guests in their Sunday best, waiting to celebrate 30 years of what they thought was a faithful marriage. Lena saw me the moment I walked in and rushed over with her arms outstretched. "Ellis, you came." She pulled me into a hug and whispered in my ear, "Smile, or everyone will think you're having another episode." I smiled and whispered back, "I wouldn't miss this for the world, Lena. Tonight is going to be unforgettable." She pulled back and looked at me with something like suspicion in her eyes, but then someone called her name, and she floated away to accept more compliments on her dress, her decorations, and her beautiful wedding. I found my seat at a table in the back and watched the room fill up with people who had no idea what they were really celebrating. Kenneth was by the bar, looking uncomfortable in his suit. He never liked big parties and once told me that Lena planned these events for herself and he just showed up where she told him to. Mac appeared at my table and sat down without looking at me. "I wasn't sure if you were coming," he said quietly. I replied, "I wasn't sure either, but I decided I didn't want to miss your mother's big night." He looked at me with something like hope in his eyes. "Does that mean you're ready to apologize and move past all this?" I picked up my champagne glass, took a long drink and said, "I think a lot of things are going to change tonight. We'll see how it goes." The program started at 7 p.m. Lena planned every minute. First, a slideshow of photos from their 30 years together. Then toasts from family and friends. Then a speech from Lena about the secret to a long marriage. Then dinner, dancing, and probably more crying, prayers, and thanking God for blessing her with such a wonderful husband. I watched the slideshow and saw 30 years of smiling pictures. Lena and Kenneth on their wedding day. Lena holding baby Mac. Family vacations, holidays, and birthdays. A whole life documented in pictures that told the story Lena wanted everyone to believe. Then the toast started. Mac's aunt talked about how Lena was the glue that held the family together. A friend from church praised her dedication to her marriage and her faith. The pastor called her an example of Christian womanhood that all the younger women should aspire to. And then Emmanuel stood up. I watched him walk to the microphone with a champagne glass in his hand and a smile on his face. He was tall and handsome, with graying temples and the kind of confidence that came from years of people trusting him. "I've known Lena and Kenneth for almost 15 years, he said. "And I can honestly say I've never met a more dedicated couple. Their marriage is an inspiration, the way they support each other, the way they put family first, the way they've built a life based on faith, love, and commitment." He raised his glass. Everyone drank, and I watched Lena dab at her eyes with a napkin while Emmanuel sat down next to his wife, the same wife who had no idea her husband had been sleeping with Lena for 7 of those 15 years. Lena stood up and walked to the microphone, and I knew this was it, the speech about the secret to a long marriage, the one where she would talk about trust and communication and never going to bed angry. I put my hand in my purse, felt the USB drive and waited. 30 years, Lena began, her voice trembling with rehearsed emotion. 30 years ago, I married my best friend, and every day since then, I wake up grateful that I get to spend my life with him. She looked at Kenneth with tears in her eyes. We've had our challenges. Every marriage does. But we never stopped choosing each other. We never stopped putting our family first, and we never broke the vows we made to each other before God and our families. I stood up. My chair scraped against the floor, and a few people turned to look at me. Lena stopped mid-sentence, her smile faltering as she saw me walking toward the stage. Ellis, she said into the microphone. What are you doing? I walked up the 3 steps of the platform, walked over to her and said, I wanted to add something to your speech if that's okay. Lena's face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Confusion, suspicion, and then a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Of course, dear. What did you want to say? She stepped away from the microphone, and I stepped forward, looking out at the 200 faces staring at me. I found Kenneth at the head table. I found Mac frozen in his chair. I found Emmanuel already starting to get to his feet like he knew something was wrong. I pulled the USB drive out of my purse and held it up for everyone to see. The slideshow was queued up, and all I needed was the right moment to bring Lena's whole world crashing down. She had no idea I had the USB already queued up behind her anniversary photos. One signal to the tech booth, and every message and picture would be on that screen for 200 witnesses. I was in complete control for the first time in this entire marriage. Lena's hand clamped around my wrist before I could move toward the projector. Her grip was tight, her nails digging into my skin, and her smile never wavered. Ellis, dear, let's get some air, she said through her teeth. You seem to be feeling unwell. I pulled my arm away and said, I feel great. Better than I have in weeks, actually. She leaned in and whispered, if you do anything stupid right now, I will destroy you. I will tell everyone you're having a breakdown. I will have you committed. I will make sure Mac never speaks to you again. I whispered back, you already did all of that. What else have you got? Her smile finally broke for just a second. Then she composed herself and said, loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. Of course, you can say a few words. We're all family here. She backed away and gestured to the microphone, and I could see in her eyes that she was calculating, trying to figure out what I could possibly do that she couldn't twist. But before I could move to the tech booth, Lena grabbed my elbow and steered me toward the hall with that iron grip disguised as a loving gesture. We need to talk first, she hissed. She pushed me into a coat closet and shut the door behind us. And in the darkness I could finally see her real face. No smile, no warmth, just cold calculation. I know you found something, she said. Mac told me you went through my phone. Whatever you think you have, it's not going to work. I have spent 30 years building relationships in that community. I've spent 30 years being the woman everyone trusts. You have spent 2 weeks acting like a crazy person who can't handle losing a baby. I felt my whole body go rigid at those words. I didn't lose a baby, I said calmly. My baby passed away. There's a difference. Lena waved her hand dismissively. Same thing. The point is, no one is going to believe you over me. You could have video evidence, and they would still think you faked it because I've already told them how unstable you've been, how paranoid, how obsessed with destroying me. She stepped closer, and I could smell her perfume mixed with champagne. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to go back out there, smile and clap during my speech, and act like a supportive daughter-in-law. And then you're going to go home, pack your things, file for divorce, and disappear from my son's life forever. If you do this quietly, I won't tell anyone what really happened with your miscarriage. My blood ran cold. What do you mean, what really happened? She smiled, and it was the cruelest expression I have ever seen on a human face. I mean that stress causes miscarriages. Everyone knows that. And you were so stressed, weren't you? Working all those hours, fighting with Mac about having kids when he wasn't ready. Pushing and pushing until your body gave out. She tilted her head. That's the story I'll tell if you force me to. That you wanted a baby so badly. You ignored the warning signs, that you kept working instead of resting. That you caused your own miscarriage because you were too selfish to slow down. I stared at her in the darkness of that closet and realized I was looking at someone with no limits. Someone who would say anything and destroy anyone to protect herself. Someone who had already decided I was disposable the moment I became inconvenient. You know what the worst part is? I said calmly. I really thought you might love Mac. I thought everything you did was just misguided motherly instinct. But you don't love anyone, do you? Not Kenneth, not Mac, not even Emmanuel. You just love being adored. Something flickered in her eyes. Surprise maybe, or recognition. You have no idea what you're talking about, she said, but her voice had lost some of its certainty. I found the jewelry, I said. The bracelet from Mind Scent, the diamonds, the pearls, the necklace. All those gifts from Emmanuel that you can't wear around your husband. You keep them hidden in your closet like trophies, like proof that someone wants you. Her face went pale in the dim light. That's what this has always been about, hasn't it? Not love, not family, just making sure everyone sees you as perfect, as desirable, as the center of everything. Lena's hand shot out and grabbed my throat. Not hard enough to choke me, but hard enough to make her point. You know nothing about my life, she hissed. You don't know what it's like to give everything to a family that doesn't value you. To smile and perform and sacrifice for 30 years and still feel invisible. I pushed her hand away and said, You're right. I don't know what that's like because I would never do what you did to feel seen. I pushed past her, opened the closet door and walked back into the ballroom. She followed close behind, still wearing that smile like armor. Ellis, wait, she called sweetly. You forgot your purse. I ignored her and walked straight to the tech booth. I handed the USB drive to the guy running the projector. Add this to the slideshow, I said. Play it when I give you the signal. He looked confused, but he plugged it in and I walked back to the microphone. Lena was standing near the stage, watching me with narrowed eyes. She still didn't know what I had. She still thought she could spin whatever came next. She had no idea that everything she built was about to fall apart. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight, I said, my voice steady though my heart was pounding. Lena has been talking about this party for months. 30 years of marriage, 30 years of faithfulness, 30 years of putting her family first. I paused and looked at Lena. She was watching me, that smile still frozen on her face. But before we continue celebrating, I think everyone deserves to know the truth about what those 30 years really looked like. I nodded at the tech booth. The screen behind me flickered and changed from the wedding photo slideshow to something else entirely. The first image was a text message. Last night was perfect. I can't stop thinking about you. The second was a picture of Lena and Emmanuel in a hotel room, dated 5 years ago. The third was a text that read, I wish I had married you instead of Kenneth. The room went completely silent. I watched 200 faces process what they were seeing. I watched Emmanuel's wife stand up, her hand over her mouth. I watched Kenneth's face drain of all color as he read the messages scrolling on the screen. I watched Lena's smile finally disappear completely. These messages spanned 7 years, I said into the microphone. 7 years of lies, 7 years of betrayal, 7 years of Lena preaching about faithful marriage while sleeping with the deacon from her church. Lena lunged for the projector controls, but 2 of Mac's cousins blocked her path. Emmanuel was already making for the door, but 3 groomsmen from a wedding in the next room heard the commotion and were standing in his way. I kept talking. Kenneth stood up slowly, walked to the screen, and read the messages one by one. His face was completely expressionless. When he got to the one dated on their 25th anniversary that said, I wish I was with you tonight instead of him, he reached up and took off his wedding ring. He looked at Lena for a long moment, then threw the ring in her face and walked out the front door without a word. Half the room followed him. 200 people had just watched the end of Lena's marriage in real time, and she was still standing there trying to figure out how to spin it. She grabbed the microphone, screaming that I was a liar, crazy, and jealous, but the photos kept scrolling behind her, and every word she said just made it worse. I had taken everything from her in front of everyone she had ever wanted to impress. I thought that was the end, but she still had one more card to play. Lena screamed into the microphone that I was a liar and the pictures were fake, and that I had photoshopped everything because I was jealous. She was mentally ill and trying to destroy her family, but the photos kept playing behind her, and no one was listening anymore. Emmanuel's wife took her champagne glass and threw it at Lena's head. It shattered against the wall behind her, and glass flew everywhere. Emmanuel tried to run for the exit, but 3 of Mac's cousins grabbed him, pinned him against the wall, and started asking him how long he'd been sleeping with their aunt. The pastor who had just praised Lena as an example of Christian womanhood was standing frozen with his mouth open, staring at explicit messages between Lena and Emmanuel scrolling on the screen. 2 of Lena's church friends were crying and holding each other, saying they couldn't believe it. They trusted her. They invited her into their homes. The caterers had stopped serving and were standing in the corner watching the chaos unfold like they couldn't believe what they were seeing. Emmanuel's wife pushed through the crowd toward her husband. 7 years, she screamed at him. 7 years you've been sleeping with her? We have children, Emmanuel. We have a life together. How could you do this? Emmanuel was still pinned against the wall by Mac's cousins. His face was red and sweating and he kept saying, "It's not what it looks like. Those messages are old. We ended it years ago. Honey, please, you have to believe me. The dates are from last month," one of the cousins said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "There's one from Tuesday saying he can't wait to see her again." Emmanuel's wife made a sound like a wounded animal and backed away from him. Her daughters, who were sitting at a table near the front, ran to her and held her while she sobbed. The pastor finally found his voice. "This is a house of God," he said weakly. "We should all calm down and handle this privately." "A house of God?" someone shouted from the back. "Your deacon is sleeping with a married woman for 7 years, and you want us to calm down?" The pastor went quiet again. Lena was still screaming into the microphone. "This is all a lie. She made it up. She's been trying to destroy me since the day she met my son. Ask Mac. Ask him what she's really like." She pointed to Mac, who was still sitting at the table frozen. Tell them she's crazy. Tell them she's having a breakdown." Mac stood up slowly, and every eye in the room turned to him. He looked at his mother. He looked at the screen where a picture of her and Emmanuel in bed together was currently displayed. He looked at me, standing at the microphone with the USB drive still in my hand. "Is it true?" he asked his mother. His voice was quiet, but in the silent room everyone could hear. "Have you been cheating on Dad for 7 years?" Lena's face dissolved into tears. "Mac, honey, you have to understand. Your father hasn't touched me in years. Emmanuel and I, we have a connection. It's not what it seems. I still love your father. I just needed someone to appreciate me." "Is it true?" Mac repeated. "Yes or no?" Lena sobbed. "Yes, but it's not my fault. You don't understand what my marriage has been like. Your father is cold and distant, and Emmanuel really sees me." Mac turned his back on her and walked out of the room without letting her finish. Lena screamed his name and started to run after him, but her heel caught on the edge of the stage and she stumbled. She tried to grab the wedding cake table to steady herself, but it wasn't stable enough to hold her weight. The whole thing tipped forward, and she fell face first into 3 tiers of white frosting and fondant. For a moment no one moved. Lena lay in the wreckage of her own anniversary cake, sobbing and covered in frosting, while 200 guests stared in stunned silence. Then someone in the back started to laugh. It spread through the room like wildfire until half the guests were laughing and the other half were filming on their phones. Lena pushed herself up to her knees. Frosting was dripping from her hair. Her designer dress was ruined, and her mascara was running down her cheeks in black rivers. She looked around the room at all the people who had spent years telling her how perfect she was and found nothing but disgust, pity, and badly hidden laughter. "Stop filming," she screamed. "Stop this now. This is a private family matter. You lost the right to privacy when you made my miscarriage public," I said into the microphone. "Now everyone gets to see who you really are." I stepped off the stage and walked toward the exit. Emmanuel's wife grabbed my arm as I passed and said, "Thank you. I suspected for years, but I never had proof." I nodded and kept walking. Lena was screaming my name now. Ellis, come back here. You can't just leave. You ruined everything. You destroyed my family, Ellis." I was almost at the door when Max stood in front of me. His face was pale, his eyes were red, and he looked like someone who had just been told that everything he ever believed was a lie. "How could you do that?" he asked. How could you humiliate her like that in front of everyone? I looked at him and I felt something cold settle in my chest. She announced my miscarriage to 30 people after promising to keep it a secret. She told everyone I was crazy. She threatened to tell people I killed my own baby and you chose her. Every single time you chose her. He shook his head. She's my mother. And I was your wife. And you never chose me, not once. I reached into my purse and pulled out the secret cell phone I had taken from Lena's closet the day I found the messages. I pressed it into his hands. This has everything. Every message, every picture, every lie she told your father for 7 years. I was going to show it to you privately. I was going to give you a chance to deal with this as a family, but you told me I faked the screenshots. You told me I was crazy. You left home, you stayed with her, and you let her threaten me. I walked around him toward the door. So I dealt with this the only way she left me. Lena was still screaming my name behind me. I could hear her sobbing, choking on frosting, and begging for someone to help her up. I didn't look back. I walked out of that ballroom into the cool night air, and just kept walking until I reached my car. My hands were shaking as I unlocked the door and slid into the driver's seat. I sat there for a long time just staring into space. I had just destroyed my mother-in-law's marriage and reputation in front of 200 people. I had just ended my own marriage in the most public way possible. I had just burned every bridge I had with the family I married into 5 years ago. And I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel bad. I felt free for the first time since that dinner party where Lena announced my miscarriage to 30 people. I felt like I could finally breathe. My phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. Just saw on Facebook something went down at the anniversary party. Are you okay? What did you do? I typed back. I'll tell you everything. Can I stay at your place tonight? He replied immediately. Already making up the guest room. Get here safely. I started the car, pulled out of the parking lot, and drove toward Daniel's apartment, not once looking back at the hotel where my mother-in-law was still covered in cake and crying about how I ruined her life. She ruined mine first.